Well, howdy. Welcome to another episode of Delayed Offside. We are a group of 4 minus 2, which is 2. We've got Pelon here and me here. Barron's too cool for school. He's packing for his trips. And Sanjay's just feeling under the weather. I think maybe he's a little burnt. Why? Because he's such a Flames fan.
For him, the season was over so long ago now. It's hard for him to keep carrying.
Yeah. So, condolences to Sanjay and on his blistering burn, and also a belated happy birthday to our delayed offside counterpart. And with that, you know what? Let's jump into the pod. All right, welcome back to Delayed Offside. Now, Pelon, the Stanley Cup finals are over. It was a quick one, maybe the fastest round throughout this whole playoff, which was almost kind of anticlimactic. Now, let's hear some of your thoughts on the Tampa Bay Lightning Stanley Cup win. How did they beat Montreal so handedly?
They're just a better team, man. They're honestly one of the most complete teams I've ever seen. Offensively elite, defensively very sound, and physical as well. I didn't watch a lot of the Tampa Bay Lightning games throughout the season just because we were so focused in the North. I forgot how physical and dirty and mean that team can be. And not just like their third line guys, like their Colemans and Goudreaus, but like Kucherov, like he's an asshole out there. Yeah. Right. And he's one of the best players in the world. He can put up points, but boy, like he's not afraid to get dirty. Right. And Braden Point. I love watching Braden Point play. He almost reminds me of like a Doug Gilmour from back in the day. Like, just a small guy, speedy, but like just wills his way to get that puck to the net and win those puck battles. And he's just tenacious. The whole team is just so strong. And the Canadiens just didn't have the weapons to match that. They were never an elite scoring team. They had great scoring depth up and down their lineup, and they were big and physical and defensively sound. But Tampa, like I said, they could do all those things. Plus they had that elite scoring, and plus their goaltending was better. Ended up being better in the series. So, Montreal just didn't have what it took to be able to beat Tampa. They were just too complete of a team.
So you're talking about the goaltending, which I think is a really good point, because the Montreal Canadiens, when they can't score and don't score, they rely heavily on Carey Price to win games and one goal, right? And that's just not sustainable over a Stanley Cup playoff. Obviously, it helped get them there, but, with the lack of scoring and off Price's stick, they can't get that. And ultimately, if they win, Price gets the Conn Smythe ahead and far above anyone else. Another interesting thing is, Vasilevsky. He's had, I think there were 3 series clinching shutouts this year. Mm-hmm. He's been just stone cold on a lot of those games that are like series clinchers, like that game 7 against the New York Islanders. I believe that was a 1-0. I think it came down to 1-0. And this one, like another shutout, like he's insane. The funny thing is looking at that handshake after and how small Carey Price looks in his equipment.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
So you're like, oh, how big is this equipment and how big is Vasilevsky? But let's be honest, he's won it before, he's done it again, and he is arguably the best goaltender in the NHL right now. Now, there is something to be said about the team that's in front of him, because they've been pretty damn good, and they've got some elite talent there. Like you said, you got Kucherov, Point, Stamkos, Hedman, Sergachev. It's
it just goes on and on.
Yeah. Exactly. And then you got the lucky horseshoe in Patrick Maroon, who's now a three-peat Stanley Cup champion. Insane. Now, here's a question. Is this win, does it have an asterisk beside it? This championship due to how they handled the salary cap?
I don't know. I don't really believe in asterisks. Like, you win it or you don't. Now, in terms of, is this going to be something that's brought up in the future that, oh yeah, they won, but potentially, probably always with Habs fans. I would think anytime this series is brought up in the future with any sort of Montreal Canadiens fan, they're going to bring up the fact that Tampa Bay was over the salary cap. And I noticed on Twitter, it just seemed like that the amount they were over continued to grow as the final went along, right? Like, it started like at 9 mil or whatever it is that Kucherov makes, making it all the way to 18 mil because they started counting guys who are on LTIR that never played. So that was kind of funny, I found. The thing is, Tampa didn't cheat. It was in the rules. They were allowed to do what they did. You can't blame them. It was very smart on their part, very shrewd on what they did, and that helped. I mean, was it fair? No, not at all. They would have had to lose a couple of really good players off of this lineup in order to be able to fit everyone under the cap. Would that have made a difference? It probably would have at some point in the playoffs. Yep. I'm not saying they wouldn't have won the cup, but when you're able to bring in Nikita Kucherov, who counts basically as $0 against the cap, like, holy cow, like that's a huge ad, right? Like,
no, exactly.
What did I say? What did I see? His points per game in the playoffs these past 2 seasons are only matched or exceeded by, I think, like Wayne Gretzky and, was it Bossy or Lemieux? It was a very elite group that he was in. So yes, I think, people will always kind of talk about that, but at the end of the day, they earned it and they deserved it.
Yeah, I agree. If there is an asterisk around these playoffs, I like about these championships that they've won, I would say that it's, they were both COVID cups, right? So they were unique seasons that weren't full. They were unique seasons that, they took advantage of in salary cap like ways, like we just talked about. And, it's going to be interesting to see what an 82 game season brings and what these athletes are like and how tired they might get, because they're not used to that, especially over the past 2 years, which has seen we haven't seen the 82 game seasons. So
for a while. Yeah,
exactly. It'll be interesting to see that. Now, do you think they can three-peat?
I think they could. I mean, they are going to end up losing some players, whether it's Killorn or Palat or Tyler Johnson or Cinderella, Chernak. Like, I'm not sure who they're going to end up having to lose. Obviously, they're going to lose someone to Seattle, so that'll take some cap off their books right there. I think they'll probably still have to lose another player or two to make everything work. But at the end of the day, they're still going to have the best goaltender in the world in Vasilevsky. They're going to have one of, if not the best defenseman in the world in Victor Hedman. And they're going to have Kucherov and Point, 2 of the best forwards in the world. So some of that depth will be gone. So they won't be quite as deep, but you never know, with their system and their development system, they might have some young guys that they're able to bring in that are ready for the NHL, and they'll be, put into positions to succeed, and they'll end up doing quite well. I wouldn't be surprised at all with Tampa. Plus the fact is, winning back-to-back cups, you might have some, veterans that are really wanting to win a cup that they can bring in for dirt cheap. And maybe they'll be impactful veterans as well. So, I mean, they'll be able to plug those positions. But I mean, to have elite players at every key position is huge.
Yes.
And the fact they're still going to have that, I really don't see why they couldn't three-peat or, at least be a contender again.
Yeah, I agree. They're incredibly deep. And if they can stay healthy or maintain health up until the Stanley Cup final at next year too. Like, I don't know. Another thing I think that's key is, Patrick Maroon. If they don't have him, I don't think they can do it.
Yeah, they've got to keep Maroon. Absolutely.
Yeah. So now after a Stanley Cup final, we see the celebrations. We see, Stamkos and Maroon bringing the cup out to the fans. There was someone with a huge champagne bottle pouring into fans'
I
mouths.
saw that. Yeah.
At the end, like just hysterical. But what's even better is the fact that Nikita Kucherov came in from his for his post-game conference. The guy was obviously half cut, had a Bud Light in his hand, no shirt, and he just trailer parked it hard. So what are your thoughts on his comments? Because like he was ruthless in terms of like hockey etiquette to other players. I thought it was great. Like it was just like something that's
entertaining.
Fresh and new. We don't see it, right? And we saw some personality. And when he's saying like, Vasi's the best. Vasi's
number one bullshit.
He's like, he's so bullshit. He's like best goaltender in the league is that Golden Knights guy.
And then last year, some other guy wins number one bullshit.
Yeah.
The way he chirped Montreal fans too, right?
Oh yeah.
I can't believe them. Like cheered like they won the cup. Their final was, or their cup was last finals.
Their cup was last series.
Yeah. I loved it. You need more. I mean, I've read this everywhere, but I agree. You need more personality.
Yeah.
Coming from players, right? Everything's always so boring. They stick to the cliches. They don't give you anything spicy. They don't show personality.
Yeah.
And I think it's hurting the sport because you look at, let's say the NBA, they're very character driven. They have big personalities. It's a little different in terms of like the stars, are just so much more important to the team because they're on the court more often and they can affect the game more than, just one superstar can on a hockey team. But not just because of their play, but because they're outspoken and they're not afraid to show their personality and, they have big social media presences and that type of thing. It makes it more interesting. And to get more fans, you need to have people that will attract viewers, either as a hero or a villain. And, Kucherov, what he did, basically, he villainized himself, especially in Montreal. But that's fantastic. Like, you need more villains, not just because of like dirty stuff that they're doing on the ice, but because of things they say, right? Like, you think of like all those like UFC fights that get, or boxing matches that get prepped. They are just beaking each other and building drama and building controversy. And most of it's fake, but they know how to get people wanting to watch the fight. And you need to kind of do that with hockey, right? Like, think of how many Habs fans are going to be booing Kucherov next time Tampa comes to town. Like, it's going to be a must-see event. People are going to want to watch to see the reaction to Kucherov from the Habs fans. You need stuff like that. I don't agree with the things Kucherov said. I mean, if I was a Habs fan, of course I would cheer that my team won a game in the final. Just because I'm cheering doesn't mean I think that we've won the cup. Of course, but I'm still going to celebrate. Like, you're in the cup final. You won a game. It's exciting. You're still alive. And I do.
I think they should play that clip the first time Tampa comes back to Montreal.
Absolutely,
they should play that clip right before the game on the Jumbotron and fire up the fans.
Yes,
Montreal's going to come out like firing for that.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I'll probably end up wanting to watch that game at least the first period just to see what that reaction's like. Whereas normally I wouldn't watch that game. And that's how you draw in viewers, right? You need to build drama. You need to build controversy. You need to build characters that people can relate to or be in awe of, or, want to follow, and to draw them in. And that's how you do it, is with character. So, like I said, I don't agree with the things he said in terms of, I think they were all inaccurate, but it was very entertaining. And for that, I give it 2 thumbs up.
Yeah, no, it was. And like, for such a sport that, goes with those cliches and those like polite statements and stuff, listen to them on the ice, watch them play. They're cheap. They're they hit each other, they smack each other with the stick, they spear, they jab. You know, it's interesting because they want to come across as like these well-to-do, nice guys, but like you see their play and how kind of, I don't know what the best word would be for it. How like kind of it's almost a character in itself,
Right.
but they contrast it in different games. And then you see something like, I don't know, man, just I loved that whole press conference because I was like, he's talking like he played.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And that's like,
well,
that's
the
what
thing is they're like, as kids, they're taught how, they're given training. They're given media training in how to answer questions. And it's like, they're basically taught to be like politicians. Yeah. And that's not fun. That's not fun at all. Like we need more, like Terrell Owen types or Ocho Cinco's, guys like that who are just full of themselves and cocky and brash and aren't afraid to say what's on their mind. And we need more of that. Like, that's why like that 24/7 series was so great, just to get a behind the scenes look with the players. And you kind of got to see them as actual human beings and not robots. Right.
Yeah.
And, even though the Leafs season ended poorly, I'm looking forward to watching that Amazon series where they were following the Leafs all season, just to get a sense as to like, what was it like behind the scenes, and what are the players that I cheer for? What are they really like? Because I don't know.
Oh, exactly. And now let's jump into the other side of this. Let's discuss the Montreal Canadiens Cup run. What can we take away from this? Like what happened to them in the finals?
I think there were three things that happened. I think number one, really leading up to that final, they played perfect hockey. Like they really didn't make very many mistakes, and their whole game plan was capitalizing on other teams' mistakes and playing really solid defensively. And against Tampa, I saw a lot of unforced errors on Montreal's part. Bad line changes, bad passes that were picked off, that type of thing. It was very uncharacteristic of Montreal throughout that playoffs. Like I said, they had been basically perfect the whole way. I remember watching that final being like, God, like, why couldn't they make a stupid pass like that against the Leafs? Like, holy crap. Like, who is this team? I think maybe there's like that style of play that they were doing, just because they're relying so much on having to play so perfectly defensively and offensively, I guess, just because they were lacking that elite goal scoring. It was tough to keep that consistently going for an entire cup run. So I think it just eventually, they came, I don't want to say they came back down to earth, but it was hard to keep that kind of play up consistently. And then that same goes for Carey Price. I mean, he proved my point that he's no longer an elite goaltender. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. But like he had like an amazing playoffs, right?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden in the finals, he had a below 900 save percentage. And again, that imperfection, you did not see him whiffing on shots leading up to those playoffs. Like you had to get perfect shots on Price for the most part to get by him. And not that he let up a lot of bad goals, but there were some that you just didn't see him let in before. And another thing is Montreal's, it's very hard for them to play that kind of system that they want to play when they're chasing a game. They really need to get that first goal to establish that defensive style. And if they're having to chase in a game and have to open up things a bit, then that makes it really hard for them to play their style of game. So that, and then the third part is just, like I said, Tampa was a better team overall. They could do the things that Montreal could do, and then they could do the things that Montreal couldn't do. And it was really tough. And, Montreal throughout the first three rounds really did a great job at shutting down the opposition's top guns, right? Matthews, Marner, invisible. And then Scheifele got suspended
for the series,
but Ehlers and Wheeler, let's say, were invisible. Stone and Pacioretty, invisible, right?
Yeah.
They slowed down Kucherov. They slowed down Point to to a degree, but they couldn't actually shut them out completely.
Yeah.
They did shut out some guys like Hedman and Stamkos really didn't produce much. But even, slowing down their stars, shutting down some guys, Tampa was just too deep, and they had guys step up, right? They had Tyler Johnson. He had a huge final series there. Andre Palat, Blake Coleman, Barclay Goodrow, all those guys produced offensively for Tampa.
Yeah.
And Montreal just hadn't really faced that for one reason or another. Other teams just didn't have the depth that Tampa did. And I mean, obviously that helps that, they were able to be over the salary cap by such a significant amount that's what you get when you're able to do that, right? Is you don't just have plug in play guys in the bottom six. You have guys that can actually produce.
No, exactly. And, I think you hit the nail on the head with that. Like, Montreal was great. They played unbelievable defensive hockey, but ultimately when the time came, they were unable to score and produce. The scary thing about Montreal is they've got some good firepower coming into their, like, not even in their prime, right? These good young players that are going to be able to give them that firepower that they were ultimately missing in the finals in Cole Caulfield and Nick Suzuki. You didn't really have that one gunslinger, for lack of a better term, like Toffoli. Yeah, Toffoli can score, but he didn't show up that well. Like, it's Anderson. He got that overtime winner, but like, where was he on the score sheet most other nights in that final? And it's difficult. You can't also rely on like your defenseman to be your offensive outputs either. So, Weber can't be your number one scorer. Petrie can't be your number one scorer. It just doesn't work that way. Romanov, right?
And they really relied on those top four.
And that's the problem.
On their defense. Yeah. Very, like, the bottom two rarely played.
Yeah.
And I think that eventually took a toll. And some of those injuries that came out eventually, like Weber was dealing with injuries, and Gallagher, etc.
That's a guy that left it all on the ice.
Yeah.
Oh.
But I mean, Tampa was dealing with injuries too, right? And Killorn ended up getting knocked out, and he was a big part of their power play. Tampa's power play, like, once Killorn got knocked out, I mean, they're still dangerous, but it wasn't quite the same. They didn't have that net front presence that Killorn provided.
Yeah.
But they still had enough weapons to get it done. Like that third and fourth line, like they really basically took them over the top, right? Like,
yeah,
that was it. Coleman that had that diving goal, like that was huge. Tyler Johnson had a really great series. It's going to be easier for Tampa to be able to move that contract now. So.
Yeah. Well, and then this leads into the next question. Is this team a contender, or did they just get hot?
Montreal?
Yep.
God. See, I'm going to say they're not a contender, and it's not because I don't think they're not a good team. I think they are a good team. But, I mean, we see Cinderella teams all the times. Like, not all the time, but we've seen quite a few Cinderella teams in these playoffs or in the NHL playoffs.
Yeah.
And they all kind of end up going the same way, right? So by Cinderella teams, I mean, got like teams that are 7th or 8th in their conference that, somehow make it to the Stanley Cup final. And I look back at, like, the 2001 Hurricanes, or the 2003 Ducks, or the 2006 Oilers. Are teams that were, a low ranked team that made it to the finals. And most of the time, these teams don't end up being a contender after that. Like the Hurricanes and Ducks ended up winning the Cup, like 4 years later or whatever it was. But those were completely different teams than the teams that made it to the Cup final. Completely different teams. So like a lot of times they don't make it to the Cup final again, and a lot of times they don't even make the playoffs the next year. And I mean, that could be the way it goes for the Canadiens. And again, it's not because I think they're a bad team. I think they're a really good team. Like, they're analytical darlings. They're good defensively. But there are some concerns. And the biggest one is the fact of how competitive that Atlantic division is going to be, right?
Yeah.
You have, again, you have the defending two-time Stanley Cup champions, Tampa Bay.
Yep.
You have, they're probably going to be in there. And then you have a bunch of teams after that they're going to be battling to make the playoffs. You got the Leafs, who won the North Division in the regular season. You have the Panthers, who like really outplayed Tampa in that first round, and they just didn't have the goaltending to get it done.
Yeah.
And if somehow Bobrovsky can return to Bobrovsky form, or they get some other goalie who can give them solid goaltending, I mean, that could be a very dangerous team. The Boston Bruins, they're always a powerhouse. Every year I keep thinking they're finally going to, their older players are finally going to fall off, and somehow they keep proving me wrong. And even Ottawa, they had a really strong end to their season last season, and their young guys prove that, they can be real difference makers, and they're going to be a year older. Maybe they'll end up upsetting a team or two. So, I mean, you really have like 5 or 6 really competitive teams in that division, and you're only going to have 4 or 5, depending of if, you get 2 in the wild card, who will make the playoffs. And so it's going to be tough. It's going to be really tough. And the thing with Montreal's play is they're built for the playoffs. That team is more built for the playoffs than the regular season, in that their defensemen are big, mean bastards, but a bit on the slower end. And when they're not allowed to hook and cross-check and trip and do whatever they can to get people out in front of the net and slow people down, they're a bit more exposed. And Carey Price, while he proved that he does have that elite talent still, that has only shown up in the playoffs the past 4 years. Like, we haven't seen a good regular season from Carey Price in quite a while. And if he can't produce in the regular season, that's going to be tough for this team, because that's what they rely on. They rely on defense, and they rely on a strong forecheck, and they rely on goaltending. And, if their defense isn't as good because you have regular season rules, and if you have a goaltender who isn't in his elite form, that might make it a bit tougher.
No, I completely agree. So now let's get away from Tampa Bay and the Montreal Canadiens, because I know it makes the bile in your stomach churn whenever we're talking about the Montreal Canadiens and how they got 3 rounds further than your Toronto Maple Leafs, Ryan. So
it's okay. There was a happy ending at the end of the playoffs for me, so I was very happy boy by the end of it.
Yeah, exactly.
And to be honest, I wanted them to, like I said, at least be competitive against the Vegas Golden Knights. So that the North Division, at least in my eyes, it proved that the North Division was actually competitive, and the Leafs finishing first in that division was at least some sort of accomplishment that I can hang my hat on in this season. So they did that, and then they got to the finals, and then I was like, oh God, they better not win, and they got crushed, and I was very happy. So
yeah, exactly. So now we're gonna jump, and we're gonna figure out and hear what your overall thoughts on your team was. So the Toronto Maple Leafs, how do you think their performance was and their storylines during the regular season and playoff? How do we feel about them going into next year?
Sure. I mean, it's probably hard for Leaf fans to remember how good that regular season went for the Leafs, but it was really the most enjoyable and exciting regular season in quite some time. I would say like the last 20 years. It wasn't since the Sundin teams in the early 2000s that I remember being that impressed with the Leafs team in the regular season. They won their division, and they were first in that division for most of the season. They had a few cold streaks in there. They had some injury issues. They had some bad goaltending issues. And yet, despite all of that, throughout all of that, they were still able to maintain that first place grip in the North Division. So, I mean, they were very consistent. They were so much better defensively this season in the regular season. And that was huge, because this team has not been good defensively since the Cap era, really, that I can remember. Maybe they were okay, right after, right when the Cap first happened. I can't quite remember how good or bad they were defensively. But for the longest time, since the Phil Kessel days and then the Austin Matthew days, they've always been a team that got outshot, outchanced, and relied on offense to try to win the day. This team was, I mean, they weren't an elite defensive team, but they were good. They were really good. They limited shots and goals against, and that's huge. So that was very great to see. The fact that the team was willing to block more shots, they were a little bit more gritty. I do think this team needs to get even grittier and meaner and nastier and more physical to be able to compete in the playoffs. But they were better in that regard. And I saw a little bit of that from some of their superstars like Austin Matthews and John Tavares, especially. Even William Nylander now and then I saw him actually win some battles along the boards and stuff like that. So that was all, very fun to watch. And the fact that we had seasons from two players that we haven't had seasons like in a long time. I can't remember the last time two Leafs finished top 5 in points in the NHL. I think Matthews was top 5.
Good question.
He was right there. If he might have just been outside the top 5, because he did get injured, so he missed some games. But I think he was in the top 5. Regardless, two extraordinary seasons from Marner and Matthews in the regular season. The first Rocket Richard winner in Maple Leafs history in Austin Matthews, nominated for the Hart, nominated for the Lady Byng. Just a phenomenal season, like the best Leafs season since the Doug Gilmour season in '93, when he was a finalist for the Hart and won the Selke.
Yeah. It was by the way, you were right. Top 5.
Okay.
Matthews were 4 and 5.
4 and 5. There we go. So, and people are pissed at Marner, and I'll get into that in a sec, but fantastic regular season, right? Very sound defensively. I can't remember where he was voted in for Selke, but I think he was in the top 10 for Selke votes this season. So very, very good season for him as well. And it was just very pleasing as a fan to witness it. It was very exciting.
Yeah.
Then the playoffs happened, and I said it after they were eliminated by the Montreal Canadiens. That was the most gut-wrenching, heartbreaking, disappointing thing to happen to the Leafs in my lifetime. It trumped losing to David Ayres. It trumped losing against Boston after being up 3-1. Yeah. It trumped the 18-wheeler. It was just devastating. It really was. Yeah. I was very disappointed in Marner's play, especially.
Yeah.
I mean, both Matthews and Marner were pretty invisible. But Marner especially, it really just seemed like he didn't he was just nervous the whole time. Like it was like he didn't trust himself. You notice him holding on to the puck an extra second too long, not making quick decisions. Like I remember he was on a 2-on-1 like a couple times in that series, and he would like fake the shot, then he would like go to pass, and then, oh no, maybe I'm not going to do that, and he'd hold on to it for another second, and then he gets stripped to the puck, and it happened like twice. Stuff like that the team does lack a killer instinct. You could tell they were playing nervous after going up 3-1. They were playing not to lose. They came out slow in games 4, 5, and 6. They came out tentative. They allowed Montreal to control play at the start. Games 4 and 5, they eventually, started playing their game, and they started dominating play and took it to overtime. And then it was like game 7, they gave up. Like it was, they weren't in it ever in that game.
Yeah.
So all of that was really disappointing. And there's excuses, and legit excuses, losing John Tavares, losing Jake Muzzin, losing Nick Foligno. I mean, you lost a lot of key pieces in that lineup, and because you have so much devoted to the top, like the core 4, the Leafs just didn't have the same type of depth. And I really didn't think their depth, I've heard a lot of, talk about how poorly their depth, played in the playoffs, but like when you think about it, Kerfoot had a really good playoffs, and he's your third line center. Galchenyuk, I mean, he had a terrible turnover in overtime, but before that, everyone forgets he had like that 3-point game. He was playing really well, and he was a healthy scratch to start the playoffs. Right. And Jason Spezza, like holy crap, like one of the best cost per results in the NHL. He was getting you points from the fourth line. So, you did have some decent depth there, but unfortunately it wasn't enough and especially when you're losing major players like Tavares and Muzzin and Foligno, and like Hyman never really seemed to be himself because he was coming back from an injury. It was just too much. There just wasn't enough there. And like I said, the lack of killer instinct and the fact that the Habs played really well. So all of that was very, very disappointing. And so looking forward to the future, honestly, man, I am nervous. I'm really nervous going into next season because to me, like this is it. Like you've failed twice now to knock out teams that you should have beat in Columbus and Montreal. Like you were the favorites going in and you crumbled. If that happens again, if they lose in the first round next year, now there's going to be major changes, whether it's management, whether it's the core four, something big is going to happen.
Yeah.
And it could, like, I don't know what they'll end up doing and what kind of ramifications it'll mean for this franchise. Like,
right.
You know, I think like 5 years ago when Matthews first, you know, his first year, and no one expected much from that team, and they made the playoffs. And I remember reading articles about how, you know, this Leafs team will win a cup in the next 5 years or something like that. And here we are, and they have yet to get past the first round. It's getting me nervous that perhaps the pundits were correct in that you cannot devote that much cap to 4 players. And like obviously Dubas and Shanahan, they weren't planning for this pandemic. They weren't planning for a flat cap. They were expecting the cap hit on these guys, like the percentage of the cap hit to be going down so that it could be closer to, like, you know, what Pittsburgh's was when they won the cups. But it's not going down. So they're going to be stuck at 50% of the cap to 4 players. If they lose again in the first round next season, I think that's just proof finally that no, this is not going to work. So, and I'm not sure what Dubas is going to do in this offseason. He's basically said he's committed to the core 4. So, you know, you're just doing, I don't know how you're going to make big enough changes to this team to make them better going into next season. It'll be very interesting to see if, you know, I think they need a third line center. I really think they're probably going to lose Hyman. And the only way I'm going to feel good about that is if they replace him with someone big and strong and nasty that can plant in front of that net on the power play and drive the puck to the net during regular play, just to get some net from presence and to hit and be physical and to get under people's skin. And like I said, this team just I don't think they're quite physical enough for the playoffs, because the playoffs are a different beast. So I think they need to add some of that. If they can do that, takeouts, like, I mean, they're already bringing back Simmons and Spezza, but hopefully they're not bringing back Thornton. Replace him with someone young, bring in some youth. Hopefully Nick Robertson's ready. He can provide some scoring depth. Yeah, I don't know. We're going to see what kind of moves they make, but I am nervous. And, you know, just like what I said about Montreal applies to Toronto, there is a chance that this team could potentially not make the playoffs next year, because it is going to be a very, very competitive division.
Yeah.
And, you know, Montreal is just as impressive as an opponent as the Leafs are, in that, you know, they went to the Cup final. So they're not going to be an easy team to pass over in the standings to make the playoffs.
Yeah. In terms of the Oilers, I'll give you some Cole's notes here. What we need and what we suffered from this year was a little bit more depth scoring. Now we saw the reemergence, I would say, of Kucherov. He looked more like the player he was a couple years ago. And if he can maintain that without getting all these concussions, good. What the Oilers need, though, and what they lacked was a left winger. They always had a center right tandem that was good. Like, you know, you got Draisaitl, Yamamoto, McDavid, Puljujarvi. Puljujarvi came in and blew me out of the water. Played great with this team this year. I feel like he took a step that he needed to take, and he's going to be good next year too. Big body, good shot, goes to the right places. Now,
are you concerned at all about the amount of points he's putting up? I think he would have been on pace for, if I'm correct, around 40 points. Playing on that top. What's that?
No, not for the first year back in the NHL. He was out for 2 years. He came, and this was the time that he looked like he was actually fitting into the system and playing the way, it looked like he was playing his game. Now, in terms of creating chances and points, you see how many posts this guy hit and how many chances he did get. It was impressive. And I think he generates more next year and not just like a 40 point.
Yeah. The one thing I will say about Puljujarvi is he does bring an element to that top six that they don't really have a lot of in that top six in terms of grit, in terms of two-way play. So I think that was, very impressive. So I if I was an Oilers fan, I'd be happy with how he's looking. The one thing I was wondering though is the the low amount of points he's getting. Well, I guess we'll see how he does on that, if he's on that top line again next year, if he can improve upon that. But like really playing with McDavid for like the whole year, and sometimes both McDavid and Draisaitl, and being on that number one power play, which was tops in the NHL, right? They had the best power play again. And you're only getting like second line point production. That'd be my only concern. But
Pilon, he was not on the first power play unit.
Yes, he was.
No, not for most of the year.
No,
that was near the end.
At the end.
It was always Chiasson or James Neal for the most part.
Oh, okay.
Power play unit. It was not Jesse Puljujarvi. So I would bet that production goes up if Jesse Puljujarvi is on that first unit power play.
That's fair.
Now, we got a really nice signing in Ryan Nugent-Hopkins for 8 years for $5 million annual. I think that's good. And you're solidifying, if anything, a solid third line center throughout. If it gets to that point, the guy likes playing center, let him play center. He also plays well on the wing with Draisaitl. That Draisaitl, Yamamoto, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins line, the dry line, love it. When he's with McDavid, they're just not what you think they should be. They're good, but are they great? Are they terrifying? No, it hasn't been that. You're getting a passer with a passer. Now, what I'm looking forward to seeing is a guy like Dylan Holloway coming in maybe next year as a rookie, put up great numbers and was a great player for, I forget. Was it Wisconsin? He played with Cole Caulfield.
Oh, okay.
And they were really complementary.
Okay.
To each other. So it'll be interesting to see how he fits into the mold. I do think they need to bring in another strong left winger, and that's where I really hope they get Hyman, because from what I saw from Hyman, man, that guy drives the net. He's got skill. He's fast, and I liked everything I saw from him. I thought, like, from a team that wasn't looking like they were firing on all cylinders in Toronto, that guy was.
Yeah. Well, and the theme with Hyman too, I found, was any line they put him on got better.
Yeah.
At one time they had him on the third line with Engvall and Mikheyev, and that line all of a sudden got dangerous. And then as soon as they took him off that line, they were very meh.
Yeah.
Tavares and Nylander were struggling as a line for a long time, and they tried Kerfoot there, they tried Mikheyev there, and nothing was working. They put Hyman there. All of a sudden, there was some good results, and the only other guy that worked there was Galchenyuk. So Hyman, and obviously he meshed very well on the first line, right? So he's going to be a very big loss for the Leafs, but he's probably out of our price range now.
Yeah, and you know what? Falls into ours. Another thing is goaltending needs to be addressed. Now, it looks as though there's going to be a couple buyouts, or the possibility of one of those buyouts being James Neal or Mikko Koskinen. We need a better goaltending tandem. That being said, Koskinen and Smith were a decent goaltending tandem a year ago. They had great numbers. They were great together. For whatever reason, Koskinen just kind of fell off a bit this year and just isn't looking like a dependable goaltender. He's kind of the guy you have to hope you win a 6-5 game against, or, there's holes in this big guy that just shouldn't be. They're going after the 40-year-old Mike Smith to try to get him to return, because he played arguably maybe his best season in his NHL career at 39, and he was unbelievable.
Yeah,
Even
he had
in
a great
playoffs.
season. Yep.
Even in the playoffs, like that sweep is not a proper reflection of how well he played in net. He stood on his head. He was good. It was the rest of the team. Now, we need someone younger. Now, does it look like Stalock? Keep him. That might be okay for a year, 2. But in that mock draft kind of thing that we did with our scenarios and where we had to pick the signings and stuff, I think really a good guy to target would be Peter Mrazek. But we'll see what comes out of this, because it's interesting. And
do you
then
think they buy out Koskinen? Is that what you think they do?
I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah,
I wouldn't be surprised. And then you get someone like, then we'll just go to the defense here. Defensively, the Oilers are the best they've been in a long time. It sounds like they're getting close with Larson. You've got Darnell Nurse, who's coming to the end of his contract and heading into unrestricted free agency next year. So, and apparently I saw somewhere on Twitter that camp has already started talking with the Oilers as well to get a deal done or start the conversation. Ethan Bear, who pairs nicely with Nurse when he's not with Barry. And then, you've had some really good guys that have stepped in. Caleb Jones stepped in, did a really good job, shown some depth from the AHL. Same with Legason. And then on the back burner, who should not be on the back burner, is Evan Bouchard. He's going to be your Tyson Barrie, point getter, puck mover. I think he's going to be better than Tyson Barrie, to be completely honest. He is that good. His puck sense on the blue line.
It's not right away, though. It'll take him some time, I would think.
You watch. And then Philip Broberg, who's another young defenseman that's really good in the system as well, and played in the Stanley Cup playoffs last year when they played Chicago. So we got some pieces rolling now. What's it going to look like kind of moving forward? I think Edmonton's going to be top 2 in the division next year. It's the Pacific again. It's going to be an interesting division because it's usually a pretty defensive, slow division. So it's sluggish hockey sometimes with like the Kings, the Ducks. Who else is in there? Those are the 2 that can come up. Yes, San Jose.
Yeah.
It's like that hard-hitting, sluggish hockey. And I'm hoping that the Oilers it's probably going to be like Vegas Oilers.
It'll be Vegas Oilers. Yeah. It's a very, very weak division.
Yeah. And then Calgary.
Yeah. Vancouver, Arizona. Yeah.
Vancouver's looking not bad. But like, it's getting over this hump in the playoffs and getting over the disappointment, and the hunger is there from guys like McDavid, like Draisaitl. They're taking these losses, and like it's going to be fun to watch them drive and see what they can do in these playoffs, but they need other people to show up as well.
Would I be accurate, Adam, in saying that this could be the most important offseason in the McDavid era?
Everyone's been saying that for years. And the thing is, I was just thinking about this. How long did it take Stamkos to win a Stanley Cup? How long did it take Ovi? Like that's I think it's the most important? I don't know, but it's very important.
I think I only say that because since Holland's come in, he hasn't had a lot of cap maneuverability to really make this team his own. I think he's been very crafty in working on the fringes with the small amount of money he's gotten. I think he's made the team the depth a little better. But this is going to be his first off season where he actually has some room to play now. And you have a chance now to take this team that had a good season, very good season, disappointing playoffs, but a good season. Try to take them from a good team to a great team. You have 2 of the best players in the world in McDavid and Draisaitl.
1 and 2 in scoring this year, not 4 and 5.
And shut up, man. Just let me enjoy my guys, man. Like, why do you have to do that?
Oh God.
But like, yeah, like, I mean, you know, they're in their prime right now. Like they're in their prime. These next 5 years are going to be, you know, their prime years. They're not going to be any better than they are right now for the next about 5 years or so. So you need to capitalize now
on those, yeah.
And you have an opportunity to bring in some impactful players.
Yeah.
So hopefully, for your sake, Holland makes smart moves and uses that cap space he has wisely to give this team what they need to make that next step.
Yeah, I agree. It's going to be an interesting offseason. You've got pieces. You've got major pieces that can get you there, right? You've got a 1-2 center punch that's maybe the best in the league in terms of regular season play.
Oh,
You've
yeah.
got one of the grittiest, most productive.
If they actually played Draisaitl at center, right?
They do. They did.
They did at the start, but again, they went back to.
No, it was most of the year they played him at center.
Most of the year, but at the end they went back to Draisaitl with McDavid, and then what did they do in the playoffs?
That's desperation. Yeah, that's their desperation.
But so that's the problem, though, is they never seem to be able to keep those guys on separate lines.
Yeah. Well, and you know what? My question then is, and what I wonder the most about is this might be the year for Tippett. If he doesn't do it, it's a new coach coming in.
Really? You think so?
It's gotten them this far or the past couple of years, and they haven't been able to get past that.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
But like, how long has Tippett been head coach? Isn't this just his second year? No? When was he brought in? What's that?
Let's see.
I'm trying to think when they brought in Tippett. I thought it was last year they brought him in, but maybe it was the year before that. But while you look at that, I think another thing the Oilers need is a third line center as well. I really thought Turris would have been a great pickup, but he was just very disappointing, right? Or you move Ryan Nugent-Hopkins to third line center if you can find some legit top six wieners to play with Draisaitl and McDavid, right? Like some guys that'll actually put up some points. So yeah, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see the moves that they make. And I think the team does need to get better defensively as well. I mean, that was they were an elite goal scoring machine, but they couldn't keep the puck out of their net. Like they needed to win those high scoring games a lot of times. So I think, they need to get better defensively, and it could just be their bottom six forwards. Like you're very happy. You seem very happy with their defense.
Their defense is good. I think it's underrated. I'd suggest they need another top four. Like Bear seemed to play well on that top line, but I mean he's fairly unproven because most of the year it was Barry up there. Like and then he was playing on the third pairing most. But it was Bear and Nurse the year
at the start, and he was great.
Well, no, the year previous.
Oh, was he on? Bear but the year previous it wasn't that great, right?
They played well. They were the best defensive pair, bar none, last year. Yeah,
right. But on a terrible defensive team at that time.
It wasn't that bad.
But I don't know. I wouldn't like maybe Bear will work there, but I don't think he's 100% guarantee.
Yeah.
And then you look at that second pairing, and Larson, I think, is a great defenseman, but he's really where offense goes to die, both good and bad, in terms of he's going to limit the offense from the opposition, but he doesn't provide any offense for the Oilers as either. And I think they need to get some sort of puck moving defenseman or two-way defenseman, I would say, with him, because they often use him as a shutdown guy, right? So you can't have like a purely offensive defenseman with him. But at the same time, when you had like Kulikov there or Russell there, they're just not great puck movers, and so they end up getting hemmed in their own end a lot.
Yeah.
So if they can find some sort of two-way defense, I know they're talking Duncan Keith. I don't know what your thoughts are on Duncan Keith. But
the ask is too high. It's insane, actually.
Yeah. I don't know if he's the answer, but if they could get like a decent...
I don't think he is. I really don't think he is. He's like a bottom 4.
Well, but he would be your bottom 4, or you mean your bottom pair?
He might be your bottom pair with
right.
that.
Oh,
might
maybe.
fit
But
in on
I
that
mean,
second.
at that dollar amount, like I mean, even if they ate some cap, he still should probably be top 4. But I don't know. We'll see what if anything comes out of that. But I don't know. I just don't think you can have like another defensive defenseman beside Larson. I think you need like a two-way defenseman who can help get driving the offense. So like, you know, you have Larson and him to there to, you know, start in their own end and block the puck and hit and get that puck back, but then actually do something with it, right?
Yeah.
Not just turn it over or chip it out so that the team can start an offense all over again, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So I don't know. It's going to be an interesting off season. That's for sure. There's a lot of cap space, and I'm excited to see what they do with it. And I really hope they address the left wing, but I guess we'll see.
Yeah, it really does sound like Hyman is who they're targeting from everything I've read.
Yeah, and that's what I thought too. So now wrapping up our episode, Pilon, thoughts on the first season of Delayed Offside being on YouTube. Now this is actually its 6th season.
Right, you guys
we've been on, but we were on SoundCloud and the iTunes store, and we didn't really garner that much of an audience beyond friends. Now, this being our first season and our first season with an extended cast, which has been really great. I think it's been the most successful.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun, man. Like I did some guest appearances for your podcast before when you weren't on YouTube, and I was really hesitant to commit because I know my personality, and once I commit to something, I get like really into it, and I didn't want to do that. But it's been, I'm glad I jumped on board. It's been fun, and we've had some really good times, and yeah, YouTube's been good to us. I'm pretty happy with the amount of followers we have, so thank you to all of you who have watched and subscribed. And, you know, if you haven't subscribed yet and you've enjoyed what you've seen, please hit subscribe below. Let us know that, you like what you see, and, hopefully then we'll continue to do so into next season. So,
Exactly.
it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah. I've especially enjoyed it as a creative outlet with you guys, and it's brought in some really great aspects of your creativity that we couldn't do previous, like with the screens with the stats.
Oh yeah. The graphics and stuff like that. Yeah.
The breakdowns at the beginning of the season were pretty rad too. And the emergence of Willie Weighs In, something I wanted to try that actually
that turned out great.
So
yeah, people seem to really enjoy the Willie Weighs In.
Yeah.
So, and I mean, really the big reason why I wanted to just jump on board is because with COVID, I was just getting antsy at home, and I just really wanted an outlet to exactly have something to do creatively, but also just sit down with some buds and have fun and talk hockey, because like we hadn't all seen each other for so long. It was just nice to sit down, talk sports, and have fun. So yeah. What do you guys think, Baron and Sanjay? What have you thought about this first season on YouTube? All right. Hey, that was actually the most intelligent thing they've said this whole season.
Oh my God. Yeah. No, it's been fun. And you know what? 200 subscribers, first year on YouTube. I'm happy with that.
Yeah. Yeah. And, we'll look for improvements, and for anyone watching, if you have ideas on things you'd like us to do to improve, or thoughts for segments or anything like that, let us know below.
Exactly. And with that, this has been another Delayed Offside. I'm Adam.
I'm Ryan.
Take care.